Welcome everybody to this session of our annual FA 101 training. This session is titled FAFSA Basics and Demonstration. I am your host, Jessica Whittier. I'm a college access counselor with the Finance Authority of Maine. So for this presentation, we are just going to do some of the basics. We are just going to walk you through filing that FAFSA form. What are students and parents seeing when they file? So we'll look at some screenshots that we have saved. Unfortunately, this year we did not have great demo access to the FAFSA form. So in the past, we've been able to log in and as a fake student and kind of see what's going on. This year they were not able, with everything else they had going on, they did not create a lot of those options for us. So these are all screenshots that we've pulled from students that we've worked with. So you'll notice that some of them are from my daughter, Margot, and others are from other students that, that members of our team have worked with. But we're going to start today by filing as a parent, showing you what that looks like. We'll also talk about filing as a student. And if given the time, we will also discuss some of the post-FAFSA completion communication that folks are getting and what screens are looking like when that FAFSA has been submitted. So first, before we get started on kind of showing those demos, I do want to just mention again that in order to file that FAFSA form, any of those contributors to the FAFSA need an FSA ID. So they need those federal student aid IDs. Ideally, they need to have it done at least 3 days prior to filing their FAFSA form. Every student needs an ID, and at least one parent in the household needs an ID. In order to create those IDs, they need to go to studentaid.gov. They need to use a unique email account that is ideally not the student's high school email account, because shortly after students graduate from high school, high schools turn off or shut down those email accounts. So we want to make sure they're using accounts that they're going to be able to access all the way through college. They are also going to be asked to provide a cell phone number, although that one is not required. In order to create those IDs, you can create them by visiting Federal Student Aid website, either on your device, so you can do it right from your phone. If you do it from a phone or a pad, you're going to find that it's just a little bald guy that you're going to click on to get access to create an account. And if you're on the website, you are going to see that login create account bar at the top right of the screen. So once you've created your IDs and you've waited that 3 days so that you can get into the FAFSA and use those IDs right away, one of the things to know, or one of the big things that changed with this year's FAFSA changes, was that the FAFSA is now a roles-based form. So that means there are separate forms or separate portions of the form for the student and for the parent. So in the past, they've been able to log in as just one of them and fill out the whole thing. In this scenario, the student logs in and answers student questions. The parent logs in and answers parent questions. The parent, you'll see in a minute, can answer some student questions as well if they're the ones who start the form. Based on what we know, and actually I'm going to change this one up a little bit. So when we first started, we were seeing that it might be best for students to start the FAFSA first, which it doesn't matter who starts first. What I am noticing from the from forms is when a parent starts first, or when the student is the last one to complete their section of the FAFSA, they are getting an estimated student aid index number right there on the screen. And I'm finding for a lot of families, that is a comforting experience that they're kind of getting that information. So again, you can start either way, whether you're the student or the parent. So for this first section, let's talk about what happens if the parent starts the FAFSA. So when you log in to studentaid.gov, up at the top, you'll actually, if you see on that bar that has the federal student aid website or name, right next to it, it says FAFSA form. If you hover over FAFSA form, you'll click on FAFSA completion and you will get this page. You can also go directly here by going to fafsa.gov. And then you're going to hit that you're going to start a new form. If the parent is not already logged in to studentaid.gov, they'll be taken to the login screen. If they're having any trouble using those IDs, they can retrieve their username, they can reset their password. And if they don't have an account at that point, they can create an account. But remember, if they do that, it is not going to pull information directly from the IRS. They do want to wait that 3 days before using their account to complete the FAFSA form. When they log in, it is often requiring them to confirm contact information. I will tell you, I am seeing this over and over and over again. Every time I log in for any reason, it's reconfirming that information. That can be a little bit annoying, but just, you can move through those sections as you go along. When you're logging in, you are going to be required to provide a secure code. So you can have that sent to text message, to email. If you remember your backup code that you'll write down, so you'll get a big backup code. So any of those can be used to log in, and this will happen for both student and parent every time they log in to studentaid.gov or fafsa.gov with their federal student aid ID. So if you've said, hey, I am the parent, so it gives you the option to tell them whether you're the student or the parent. If you're the parent, you'll click parent. So the arrow is covering up the student one, but if you are student, you will pick student. In this case, we're going to click parent. And then when anyone starts the FAFSA form, the first time they're in there and getting it done, they are going to see 4 different videos that come up. So they can absolutely watch through those short videos to learn more about the FAFSA process, or they can just continue through each of those 4 slides that contain the video, the 4 pages. But it'll let you know about the FAFSA and what's going to happen after you submit. So when a parent starts the FAFSA, they're going to provide student identifying information, and they're going to see the onboarding screens. They are then going to answer questions that determine dependency for the student. So this is the one section where that parent will put in some information for the student if the parent is starting this, not the student. So it is going to ask about student personal circumstances. So they're going to ask about the age of the student. They're going to ask about if the student is married or not, if the student has children. So all of those things that could make a student an independent student will be asked. It's then going to ask about other circumstances and unusual circumstances. Again, all of this to determine dependency status. Because if the student does not need parent information on the FAFSA, it's going to let the parent know that they don't need to continue forward because the student is not going to require their information on their FAFSA form. But if it determines that the student is a dependent student, then there are a couple of questions, and this is where we really want to talk about some of these. First is that question we know that says, do you want to apply for a direct unsubsidized loan only? And as Mila mentioned in our opening session, that is one of the questions that has stumped some folks, and we are seeing students answer yes to this question when they do not actually intend to do so. And that happens because they're thinking, oh, well, of course I want some loans, or at least I want access to loans. But in reality, what this question is asking is it's saying, hey, you are a dependent student, but if your parents are unwilling to provide their information, but you don't have a unique situation for that, they're just refusing to help you, then all you qualify for would be unsubsidized loans. Is that the case for you? For the vast majority of students, this answer is going to be no. Next, the parent is going to see sections on reviewing their identity. They're going to provide consent and approval to have their information pulled directly from the IRS. It will ask parent demographic questions, and parent financial questions. And if the parent's spouse, if the parent is married, and they're going to include their spouse's information as well. So if the parent files their taxes with their spouse, all that they're going to do here is put in information about the spouse. If the parent and their spouse file taxes separately, what's going to happen is when they put in that information about that other person, it is going to email that the other parent, so the step parent or the other parent where they file separately, to have that parent also come and fill out their portion of the FAFSA. So you will be submitting a FAFSA section for in essence, every tax form that would have been completed in that household, as far as parents and student. And then after that, they'll go ahead and review and sign that FAFSA. When they do that, the students are going to receive an email invitation or a link where they can go directly to studentaid.gov and log in with their ID. So in this case, this was me inviting Margot, saying, I got it started. Hey, Margot, can you come and do your portion of the FAFSA now as well? And so they'll accept that invitation and it'll take them right in. There is a scenario where if the parent wants to complete as much of the form as possible, they can, at the bottom of the screen, provide student information manually. We would highly discourage this option. So for the most part, it is going to be the best case scenario for the student to log in on their own and provide their information. Because even if the parent puts all this information in, the student still has to log in to sign and submit. So, and they really want to be able to pull their information from the IRS, and they'll have to be logged in order to do that. So, although that option is there, we would discourage most people from using it. So let's talk about what happens if that dependent student starts the FAFSA. So in this case, again, they're going to click on Start a New Form. They're going to log in with their ID. Again, everyone is going to be asked to verify, to use two-step verification every time they log into that FAFSA. And in this case, they will indicate that they are the student. So that's where that will change, and it will change the questions they get asked. So then students will verify some information about themselves. If anything is wrong, they can go to the settings section in the FAFSA and update their information. They will have to indicate where they are a legal resident of, so which state that they're a legal resident of, and when they became a legal resident. This is important for states who have state financial aid that they are offering, but maybe there's a stipulation that you need to have lived in the state of Maine or the state, whatever state you're in, for at least a year. This is also important for colleges who are looking at in-state versus out-of-state tuition. So that will also help them determine what status a student might have there as well. And this is that consent and approval page. So both students and parents will see this page when they are working through their portion of the FAFSA. It is ultimately saying that you as the student or you as the parent agree to share information or transfer information from the federal tax form directly into the FAFSA form. You are going to read through this page if you feel like you need to. It is a very long page, but at the bottom, it gives you the option to decline or approve. Both students and parents must approve and provide this consent in order to get federal financial aid for that student. So you want to make sure that you are approving this when you get to that this page. And this will allow you to kind of move forward at this point. If you say decline, I don't have a screenshot of it. I should have. But it is going to give you a warning saying, hey, you did not agree to pull your stuff directly from the IRS. Did you know that that means that you don't qualify for financial aid? Do you want to change your answer? And it gives you that option to do so. So know that that is there. Everybody needs to approve having their information pulled from the IRS, even if you didn't file a tax return for the year that they're asking for. So sometimes I'll have students going, well, I didn't file taxes for 2022. That's okay. What it is going to pull is a statement from the IRS saying that that person, whether it's the student or the parent, has no record with the IRS for that year. And that is what the college needs in order to move forward in processing that student's financial aid. So regardless of whether or not the student or the parent filed taxes, they want to approve sharing information, that transfer of information. It's then going to ask about student personal circumstances. So again, it's going to want to know a little bit more to see if the student is eligible for financial aid. It is going to ask about the student's marital status. It's going to ask what year the student is in college. That will determine, again, different types of aid that colleges and the federal government has available to the student. It's also going to ask if you already have a bachelor's degree. So again, most high school students are not going to have that, but we certainly have some scenarios where someone might be applying or going to a college and they already have a bachelor's degree. Once a student has a bachelor's degree already, the amount of federal financial aid they're eligible for decreases. So the federal government is going to want to know the answer to this question so they can give the students a better idea of what kind of financial aid they might receive from the federal government. And then it's going to ask these questions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 of them. So 8 of them here. There are 13 in all, but some of them are on a different page. But these 8 are questions about partially determine a student's dependency. So for most students, it's going to be none of these apply. But we certainly are seeing more and more students who are in legal guardianship of somebody other than their biological or adoptive parents, or if at any point after age 13 they were in foster care, if they are emancipated. So all of those things, these different things can make them an independent student prior to turning 24 years of age. So if any of these apply, they would click on them and then it would let them know that they are an independent student. But if they click that none of them apply, it's going to continue asking some additional probing questions. One of them is if at any point after July 1st of the year before that they're filing that FAFSA, was the student unaccompanied and either homeless or self-supporting and at risk of homelessness. So again, answering yes to this question is going to bring up a few more questions about that student's situation. Answering no moves you forward to the student unusual circumstances page. And so maybe you have a student you're working with and they are not homeless or at risk of homelessness that you can tell, and they don't qualify for any of the other things that make them an independent student. However, knowing the situation that they're in, getting the information from their parents to complete the FAFSA would be a hardship or would put them in a position where they may experience harm. So some of the things would be if the student left home due to an abusive or threatening environment, a student who is whose parents are incarcerated, so they just can't get that information. So if a student has one of these unusual circumstances, they are going to answer yes. In doing so, it is going to let them know that they are a conditionally independent student, but that they are going to need to reach out to their colleges and follow up with more information about that unusual circumstance. And from there, the college will take it over on their end after kind of hearing the scenario and getting any backup documentation that they might want or need. then they will be able to use their professional judgment to make that student an independent student, or they'll let the student know that their situation does not merit that independent student status, and they'll have to go back in and try to submit that parent information. Again, if they answer no to that question and they still can't provide parent information, this is that question again about applying directly for that unsubsidized loan. That would be the situation where they could take at least that. But again, the vast majority of students should be answering no to this question if they are able to provide parent information. So on the student side, so on the parent side, they told the form information about the student. If you are the student starting, you are going to tell them information about your parent. So it asks first, are your parents married? Yes or no. If you say yes, then it tells you right away that you are going to provide information for both of your parents. I'm going to back up for 1 second. So it asks, are your parents married to each other? So yes. So if you answer yes, if you answer no, it's going to ask you about information, a few more probing questions. So if they're not married to each other, do they live together? If your answer is yes, again, you're going to provide both parents information. If your answer is no, it is going to explain how to determine which household the student is going to file with. And for this FAFSA form, the student is going to file their FAFSA with the household that provided the most financial support for that student in the last year. From there, they are going to go ahead and invite parents. So when you're thinking about the household that the student lives in, whether that's with their parents or with both parents, with a single parent, or with a parent and step parent, you want to think about the status of those parents filing taxes for the year that we are submitting this FAFSA for. So in this case, for the 24-25 FAFSA, we are looking at 2022 tax information. If the parents in the household only filed one tax form, you only need to put one parent in this parent where you indicate who the parent is. You do not need to complete the parent, spouse, or partner section. So just that one, you just need to include one parent. Unless two tax forms were filed for those parents. So if those parents are not married, but they're both the biological parents or adoptive parents, and they file taxes separately, you are going to need to provide both parents information, because both parents are going to need to submit tax information on that form. Same thing if you are, if the student's parent is married and to a step parent and they don't file taxes together. So again, it will matter, is there one tax form being filed by the parents or two? That will tell you whether you're putting in one parent's information or two on this invite parents to the FAFSA form page. When you are inviting either student or parent, you need to make sure that everything matches perfectly. So you must match the legal name, the date of birth, and the social security number must match exactly what that parent or student has put in their FSA ID. The only thing that does not have to be perfect is the email address. You can send it to whichever email that you have for that person, but everything else needs to match up. We also see where it does talk a little bit about only putting in that one parent in an attempt to limit the confusion for parents who file jointly, file their taxes jointly. They, again, just explaining you do not need to put in both parents' information. And then we'll have some student demographics. Again, student demographics are only going to be seen by the student. So these are questions that the parent will never see. And the student will be able to answer these questions about themselves. These are a little bit more in depth than they have been in the past, especially in the questions that ask about heritage. So once you click on a box, more boxes open up. You don't have to answer. You don't have to get super specific, and you can always let them know that you prefer not to answer as well. It'll then ask about citizenship status for the student. So if they're a US citizen or national or an eligible non-citizen, they will be able to complete the FAFSA form and be eligible for federal financial aid. If they are an eligible non-citizen, they will be required to enter their A number, which they can usually find on their green card. It's their alien registration number. If they are neither a US citizen nor an eligible non-citizen, they will not be eligible for federal financial aid and have no need to complete the FAFSA at this time. They'll ask about parent education status, whether parents were killed in the line of duty. Then they'll ask questions about the high school completion. So are they getting a high school diploma or a GED? Were they homeschooled? And then we start getting into some sections where you need to choose from the drop-down list. So what happens here is when it comes to student high school information, you're going to start writing in Maine, and it's going to pop up a list, and you need to choose Maine from the list. That is what's going to allow the next pop-ups to happen so that you can kind of get down to your exact high school. The same thing happens when selecting colleges. So make sure you are choosing from those drop-down lists as you go along. You'll want to confirm your high school. And then it'll ask about finances. So when it comes to students, student tax filers will only see 2 questions if they've pulled that information in from the IRS. One of them is the amount of college grants, scholarships, or AmeriCorps benefits reported as income to the IRS. So for high school students just starting out, they will have none of that. So that will be 0. And the other question is foreign earned income exclusion, and that is typically 0. However, some students who have been in college already and are returning students may, in fact, have received a form from their college to be used on their taxes because they have received more financial aid than they needed in order to go to college. So they got more financial aid than they needed. So next, in essence, a surplus of financial aid. Don't we all wish we were in that scenario? And it is in those cases that you will put that number in this form. And that happens because students have to claim that money on their tax return as it shows up kind of as income. So money that they've made in their tax return. They want to know on this form about that information because they want to subtract it from how much your income really is for the year, because they don't think your financial aid should be counted as your income because it was a reason that the colleges gave it to you. Students and parents will never see any federal tax information that was shared by the Direct Data Exchange. So sometimes we have families who are afraid that if they submit their information, the student will be able to see it or their parent will be able to see that information. That is not the case. So that stuff is not viewable between students and parents. So then it's going to say the FAFSA form helps determine your eligibility to pay. So you might have some additional financial information to provide. Not every student will need to provide asset information. Depending on the income of their parents or other scenarios that might be occurring in their family, like whether or not anybody in their household receives Social Security income, or anyone in their household gets TANF or food stamps, then they would not need to provide student asset information. But if asked, there will be 3 categories. First is total cash savings and checking accounts. They'll also need to include any investments like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds that are not in qualified retirement accounts. And if that student owns their own business, they would include that as well. These same questions will also be asked for parents. A couple of things to keep in mind. There are a few things that are excluded automatically from the FAFSA form. You will never need to include information about the home you live in. Your primary residence is protected for FAFSA purposes, as well are your qualified retirement accounts. So 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, pension plans, none of that goes into the FAFSA form. The question about the net worth of businesses is a new question for this year. We have struggled a little bit with getting information from the federal government or guidance from the federal government on how to help families determine how to assess the value of that business. From what we've been able to determine right now, one of the better ways that we are suggesting is that folks take a look at what they would insure their business for minus any debt their business has. And then that would determine what that business is worth. Again, and they'll need to select colleges. They can select up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA form this year. That is fantastic. It means fewer students going in and deleting colleges and adding more colleges if they need to. But just like the high school, you are going to select from the drop-down boxes. So you'll put in whatever state your college is in. You'll choose that state, and then you'll, again, find your college from there. Once you have put your colleges in your list, you'll see that school's federal school code number. You can view more information about that college. And then for the student doing their section, you're done. So this is an example of when you are on that last page, and it is going to show you all of the sections of that FAFSA form that need to be completed in order for your FAFSA to be complete. What will happen sometimes is students or parents will get to this and they'll see some of these things are grayed out. And they think, oh, I'm missing this, but I can't get in here. I don't know what's going on. What's wrong? So in this scenario, what we are seeing is we are seeing all of the sections that the student was able to finish. And that signature section, section 5, they cannot click on it. In order to provide their signature, they have to hit continue, that blue button at the bottom of the page. But then they're going to see that there are some sections that the parents still need to complete. Up above, it says who is that parent that is going to complete them, but that parent hasn't finished those yet. That is fine. So the student can go ahead and finish that FAFSA form, and then the parent will go in later and do theirs. Same thing with the parent. When the parent is doing this, they'll see that all their sections are finished and maybe a couple of sections that they were able to fill in for their student, but that there are lots of student sections empty, and that is fine as well. So the parent wants to continue forward to the last page, which will be that signature page. So at this point, the student and or the parent can sign that FAFSA form, and they'll sign and submit it. And if you are finishing the FAFSA, if you as a student are the last person to complete your section of the FAFSA, you will see this page. But on this page, in addition to this information letting you know that your FAFSA is done, it might also include an estimate of your student aid index, your SAI, or how much the federal government thinks that your family can afford to pay to send you to college for 1 year. If you are the student, finish it first, then you are not going to see that estimated SAI until your parents file their section of the FAFSA, and then the student will get an email confirming that the FAFSA has been completed, and that email should include the student aid index number. Once you've submitted that FAFSA form, there is some more information at the bottom of the screen. That information is about the FAFSA submission summary. So it's going to let you know about timing and things like that. So for everything that we know right now, they've, again, started processing those FAFSA applications. So we may have some students who can see their FAFSA submission summary, very soon. We know that they cannot make any corrections at this time, but that should become available later this month or early next month. In order to log in, so if you if you are the student or the parent and someone has invited you to fill out the FAFSA form, and you have not done it right away, reminders will be sent after it's been sitting there waiting for you for 7 days. It will send another email after it has been sitting there waiting for 14 days. And they have told us that incomplete FAFSAs with no activity for 45 days will be deleted, but that has changed. So right now they are leaving them open for a much longer period of time as they work out all of these kind of bugs and challenges that they've had getting this FAFSA up and going. And again, this is what that reminder email would look like. So this would be a one being sent to the student. It would say, help complete Margot's form. Margot can't be eligible for federal student aid without your input. And it gives you that option to move on and log in and do your portion of the form. When you log in, you might see pending invitations. So if you view your activity, you'd be able to start your FAFSA form. And then you'll see the invite, whether it's a parent that invited the student or the student who invited the parent. You would accept that invitation and begin completing your section of the FAFSA form. By accepting the invitation, you agree to share your information. And again, whether you're student or parent, you're going to need to provide that consent and approval to have your information pulled from the IRS. All right, so we have seen all of these already. I'm going to scoot through them. I think I duplicated them, and actually, I'll show you that. So some of the other questions, number in college. So this is a section that parents will typically see, and sometimes students, but mostly parents. And that you always want to indicate that you want to, oh, that's the wrong question. Here we go. This one, family size. So you always want to indicate that you would like to change family size. Double check that it is correct. We are often seeing that the number being pulled in is incorrect. So make sure the students are putting in there, or parents are putting in the correct family size. They will also indicate the number of people in college at the same time. So in the past, we would say, do not include parents in this number. That has changed this year. So they absolutely can include anybody in the household. So how many people in the household will be attending college at the same time? All right. On the parent section, they will also ask about annual child support received. It's going to ask about that in the parent asset section. That is an improvement over the past. In the past, it was counted as income. Parent income plays a much larger role in this process. Parent assets play a much smaller role in this process. All right. And again, signing and submit. So if the parent fills out that form, it's going to give the parent some information, letting them know that they've finished their section, and the student will receive an email. And that email will come from the U.S. Department of Education, and it'll be titled, "We received your FAFSA form." And that is the email that the student will get that will include that estimated student aid index number if they weren't able to see it already on the screen. When they submit that FAFSA, it's going to show that it's in review until they start processing the form. Oops. All right, and I know I will say we are hoping that in the next one of our next trainings in the future months, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about what students are seeing after the fact. We are still kind of getting used to some of the information that's coming in that the students are seeing in emails or communications from the federal government. So again, we will keep you up to date on as much of that as possible. Excellent. So now, do we have any questions? Flo, did you see any questions as we went along?
Nope. There's no questions in the chat.
Beautiful. Well, I'm gonna hang out for just a minute, and to do that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Actually, I'm gonna stop recording first.